Let's code a network automation script together. If we haven't already met, hey, my name is Erica Dietrich, or Erica the Dev Online. I am multitasking, eating my breakfast today, so pardon me, but this is not a formal video. The point of this video is actually not to teach you exactly how to do what I'm about to tell you, which was submitted by a community member, but it's actually to teach you the entire process of how to think, because you all are smart enough to know how to do this. It's just something that you have to practice doing, and there's a lot of initial effort in the beginning, learning how to think programmatically, learning what steps to take, how to break it down, and I understand that, so that's why we're doing this video. One final caveat to keep in mind as I go through this script idea with you, well, I guess there's two caveats. One is that I'm going to try to keep this as unedited as possible so that you can see what it's really like to write a script. But I'm a new mom, so I don't have the luxury of working for hours at a time like I did before when I would code. I buy sometimes a whole hour, sometimes 10 minutes, and so you're going to see these clips kind of come together, you know, from different points in time, but they're not because I'm cutting things out that I did. It's just because that's the reality of my life right now. The second caveat to keep in mind before we get started is that I am a software engineer by trade. So I have my CCNA, you know, I got it like 7 years ago. I've worked at Cisco in network support on the secure firewall or firepower team or source fire team, but my expertise is in software engineering, right? And so when you see me struggle in this script, the struggles that I have are going to be the largest in networking, right? There's going to be things that you might see me struggle with that you're like, well, duh. And that's fine, right? That's part of why network automation, I personally feel, has not moved or had enough support up to this point, is that it's really hard to find people who are truly experts at both. I think that's hard to find. So keep that in mind. I'm showing you behind the scenes, but your experience is probably going to be different than mine because of your background and because you're a different person. So let's get to it. Our first script idea that is real world that I thought was probably a good candidate. It was actually a combination kind of submission that I am taking from both Aaron Brown and James Strathdy. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So here was the script idea. Aaron suggests a script that I could run to tell me the last time an interface was in an upstate and what the MAC and IP of that device was. And it has quite a few likes, so it sounds like he's not alone in finding that useful. We also have an addition from James Strathdy that throwing in a DNS value if found would be nice. And we have a nice comment under that from Brian Dufresne as well that I'll get to later. We are actually going to start with the writing a script framework that I created in a previous video. As a reminder, these are the parts, and we're just going to take this step by step. I'm going to help you break it down because we don't just approach this in one big chunk. Like when I read Aaron and James' idea there, even though I'm a developer, I don't just, oh, I know exactly how I would do that. Don't get me wrong. When you start solving the same types of problems over and over, you get a lot quicker at it, and sometimes you do know, but you know, I'm going to have to go through the thought process along with you guys. We also now have the Network Automation Forum's recently released Network Automation Framework, and in future videos, I definitely want you to have this framework in mind when writing your scripts, but two reasons I'm not covering that now. A, it's new and I want to make sure that I am going to explain it appropriately for you. Two, I want you to just get things working. That is really the goal here. It's not, am I doing it the best way? Am I doing it the most securely? Am I following the best architecture and best practices in general? We start out by just understanding the lay of the land and what the fuck we're doing. Okay, so get it working, and we will be more methodical and use best practices more so in these additional videos later on. So the first step in writing a working script is ideation, right? Which we discussed in the last video was simply the process of coming up with an automation idea or gathering that information from someone else. We are going to skip this part in this video because I had an idea submitted, but please go back and watch that video because I do go into detail, or some detail at least, about what you should do if someone presents you with an idea for network automation, because it's not as simple as someone just saying something and you kind of running with it. We're really just doing that because this is a simulated scenario using a social media submission. And we might need to reach back out to Aaron and James. We'll see. So that means we're gonna skip to the next step, which is break down the problem. So you can see that I rewrote the script idea here just so I can break it down. The first is we want to know whether or not the interface is an upstate. That's part one. The second is what the MAC address of that interface was, which is part 2 piece of information we need, and what the IP address was. We need a third piece of information. And finally, if we can, a DNS value if found. So we're looking for 4 different pieces of information with this script. Those are the 4 initial parts I'm going to break it into. Now, that doesn't mean that those are all the parts involved. We're going to further break this down, but I'm just taking you through my thought process here. We also need to be able to actually reach this interface to collect this information about it. So we need to determine what it takes to do that, whether or not we're able to do that, but that's another part of this puzzle. In a real world scenario, we would also probably have requirements for things like where this information goes once we find it. Like, is it just something that stays in the terminal that someone runs live when they need it? Does it need to be sent to someone? What format should it be in? We don't have that information right now. Something to keep in mind about this automation process or step-by-step framework that I gave you for writing a script, a working script, is that it is iterative. So I wrote it as if it happened step 1, step 2, step 3, but a lot of times it's iterative and we have to go back to the beginning or have to go back to a previous step because something has happened or we've gained more information or we've realized that we're missing information. Now, you're probably going to see me do that a lot, again, because I'm not an expert in networking. So for me, gathering information is going to involve not just the standard things that I discussed in our previous video, like, oh, do I have credentials to SSH to this device? It's also going to be things like, how do I actually find this information? Like, would someone typically find this information? That's the kind of information we're gonna gather here, and I'm going to slightly, again, go out of order here in our steps and decide on an MVP for this. I think that starting out, what's most important is that I'm able to connect to, I'm gonna say a switch because I wasn't given a device in this scenario. Again, if we gathered requirements in a real world scenario, we would ask exactly what device and model, software version, but I'm gonna make it up. So I'm going to choose a switch, and I don't even know what kind of switch. I guess a Cisco iOS. Again, comment below if you have certain networking devices that you'd like me to focus on, because I can at least mock things up even if I don't have the device myself. So the MVP of this is literally just going to be getting the last time an interface was in an upstate. We're not going to worry about the rest of it now. Those are all niceties that we can add on later once we figure out this first part. And I will say that my initial thought on this is that because it says the last time an interface was in an upstate, I know that you can get the interface status on a CLI or using the CLI in the moment, but I don't know that you can use a CLI command to see the history of the last time the interface was in an up status. My guess is that you can't. My guess is that you have to have some sort of logging solution to look back at those historical records. So I am going to do just a little bit of research on whether or not I should simulate looking at like syslogs, or if there's something else that I should pretend that I'm using this information from. I'm going to put down the camera. I'm going to do a little bit of research. Oh, and guys, one last thing I should mention is that anybody who codes, developers, non-developers, whatever, automators, we Google crap. And in the age of AI, we AI crap. And so even though we're going to go into detail about how to use AI to learn in level 2, you're going to see me using AI instead of Google in this video, because I ain't got time to look through Google results. And since I'm doing initial research, I've got Claude Desktop already pulled up here, so I'm just going to ask Claude, the Opus 4.8 model that I'm paying for. There's not a right and wrong way to do things. I could just open my IDE and I could start asking Copilot chat questions, even though I'm not yet coding. For me, it's just, I do not like opening the IDE until I'm ready to actually start coding some crap. It's a mental thing, because once you start going in there and you start coding, sometimes you can kind of get lost in the weeds and start doing things and then realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have jumped to that, or I should have done more planning, whatever. So we're just going to use our Cloud subscription. But again, feel free to instead use Google. Feel free to instead use GitHub Copilot like we're doing through most of this course. You do, you boo. Okay, so here's my thought process based on what Claude is telling me, that there's, on the switch itself, that there's 3 ways that you could kind of sort of get historical data on interface status. The first being the show logging command, and it looks like it does actually show, every link up or link down, with the timestamp, but because it's only going to keep a few kilobytes of logs, and the device could have been reloaded in between you wanting to have this information for some reason, like maybe you're doing a root cause analysis or something, I'm just gonna say this is not a great option for moving forward with getting this information. We'll keep it in the back of our minds because it's better than nothing, right? It could still be useful to someone, and perhaps there is little enough logging on here that you would still get the last link up or down status. But if the last time that the link was up was a long time ago, perhaps that buffer's already full of a bunch of other messages. So I don't know that for certain. Again, I'm making an assumption here as a non-network engineer, but let's talk about the second option. We could use show interfaces and the name of the interface, which shows the current state plus last input output times and last clearing of counters, which hints at recent activity, but not a flap history. Again, that doesn't sound like the optimal solution. I don't want to just hint at recent history. I want to know the recent history. So, yeah, again, we got that in the back of our mind just in case we need this, and it's like the only thing we can do is better than nothing, but nah, we're not looking for that. Okay, show interfaces link. So this command does show how long each interface has been up or down since its last transition. So that would allow us to deduce, I assume, when it last flipped to an up state or whatever, when it was last in an up state. But if it's only valid on Catalyst platforms, and since this person did not specifically indicate the model that they want to use, we're just going to pretend that it's not a Catalyst switch. And yeah, so if you're watching this and you have a Catalyst switch, then here, it's a lot easier. You can use this command and do it locally. But we're going to move to the logging option that I kind of thought we'd have to do anyway. So for real historical data, you do need something external since the switch doesn't retain it. So you can use a syslog server to permanently capture up-down events, or SNMP polling traps feeding a tool like Libre NMS, blah, 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 SolarWinds, which will graph interface state over time. So this is where it comes down to y'all all have different setups, right? This is why I'm showing the thought process and not just handing you code, because some of you might have syslogging set up. Some of you might have SNMP configured. Some of you might be doing Libre, some of you might be using SolarWinds. And at the end of the day, the code might be a little bit different for each of those things, but the thought process, the problem solving is what you need to know, regardless of how the tools change and how you might need to plug and chug a little bit of code. I know that it is common to use SNMP polling and that SolarWinds is really popular, just thinking back to my Cisco Tech experience. But I don't got a lot of time and I have a lot more experience working with syslogs. And since nobody specified in this social media request, we're gonna do it with syslog. Maybe I'll do another video sometime where I actually gather requirements from a community member, but people on LinkedIn aren't required to comment back and forth with me. They don't work with me or for me. So we're gonna do syslog. We're just going to assume in this pretend scenario that we have a syslog server configured and that we have set the command logging host, whatever the IP address is. I know that we're doing a lot of pretend and simulation. I will be honest with you that we do a lot of that in software development as well. I'm trying to figure out how to put this succinctly, but sometimes we just want to know that our coding logic works without setting up a bunch of other crap. In this video, I'm focused on the code, right? I have confidence that you can set up syslogs. I know you can do that because you're a network engineer. The part that we're focused on is how do you determine how to get this information and parse it and whatever, right? Do something with it programmatically. So I am going to just pretend that we have syslogs. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And it will be up to you. And we'll see what I do after that, how I determine when it's time to actually configure a syslog server and I don't know, test it out myself, or how easy that would be to do. I'm just thinking out loud here. So again, because we're just concerned with the logic right now, I am just going to simulate manually that we have these syslog messages. Now, I know that syslog messages, they have kind of a standard format, right? At least for maybe a particular device, the message is always going to look kind of the same, use the same words, have the same prefixes, have the same syslog number associated with it. I think this is a great place to use AI to generate fake syslog messages. Now, again, as a network engineer, instead of using AI to make up fake syslog messages, I think you could probably just copy and paste messages just so that it feels more real, the experience. Once we have those messages, we can figure out through code how to find and figure out the last uptime status, and and give that back to the user, whoever's using the script somehow. And then once we can do that, we can go back, I think, and work on what code would actually be required to collect that information from syslog dynamically, and not just like having pretend syslogs literally already in the code base, if that makes sense. Okay, actually scratch that. I was just walking around and thinking that in a real world scenario, we would be first addressing what the biggest risk to this script failing is first, right? So our MVP is, be able to gather syslogs and then be able to find the last uptime status from it. But the risk here is that what if we cannot pull syslogs for some reason? Like maybe we have syslogs configured, but we have some issue with like pulling them into our script. Again, I'm not really sure what that problem is gonna be because I gotta do more research. I don't remember anymore. But yeah, so I am not going to actually start with the fake data yet and then try to find the up status. I'm actually going to start with the risk first. And then if for some reason I cannot overcome this risk in this video, I'll continue with the fake data just so you can see some code. Okay? Oh my God, here's another like dumb moment. I haven't worked in networking in such a long time, and then I was on a firewall team and like went into security after that. I just tried to do this route switch because you guys like really want the route switch stuff, understandably. So a Cisco Catalyst switch typically runs the Cisco IOS XE platform, and then older legacy models run classic Cisco iOS. So that feels dumb, but that's how it happens, right? I mean, we're all dumb at something. So I think I'm going to figure out how different is Cisco iOS XE software to iOS, because I made up the scenario in the first place. So I could just assume that we want this information from a switch running Cisco iOS XE. But again, I'm going to do that research and figure out how different those software versions are. I guess it doesn't even really matter if we're pulling it from syslogs, right? I'm just going to see I'm going to just look a little bit into the differences between these two softwares and like the difference would be in getting this information. And maybe I'll write the script two different ways just for giggles. Maybe I'll do the show, whatever that command was that Claude suggested, and locally, and then also look for syslog. So. Okay, so we did get clarity that this command only applies to newer Catalyst models running iOS XE. So that's good, right? That's useful information. But the downtime and uptime that it shows is not very specific. Like in this example from Claude, using Opus 4.8, right? Showing like downtime and uptime is like 6 weeks, 0 day, 1 week and 2 days. I think that that's generically helpful, but my guess, this is an assumption, but my assumption from the person who submitted this is that like a timestamp would be more useful, like knowing the exact time that an interface was last up, because I know that a lot of times when you're troubleshooting issues or trying to determine root cause analysis, that like the hours and minutes that something happened and the order in which those happened do matter. So yeah, I think that we're not going to use this unless we just get desperate. Okay, I'm about to take a lunch break, but I tried to record me writing out this little note card while doing it, and apparently I didn't hit record. So we're gonna debrief this a little bit before I head to lunch because don't skip meals to code, right? It takes a while to code and work through problems, and that's just not a good idea. Speaking from personal experience. So here's my handy dandy little note card here. Talking about blah, 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 basically continuing to break down the problem, like how I'm going to get these syslog messages, and how I will sort through them to find up-down status of an interface. There is a lot here because because we didn't gather real requirements from the submitter of this idea, I am making a lot of assumptions here. I'm making a lot of assumptions and just kind of making the script how I want to. Again, don't do this in real life. I'm just trying to help you learn how to code. Just to recap some of this note card right now, I can talk more in the moment about it. When it comes to getting syslogs, I decided that for now, starting out, I'm going to assume that they're going to a Linux box. So that means that I need to figure out how to SSH to that box. That's going to be part of the script. I also need to be able to grep through the syslogs on the Linux box. So there are caveats to this, like what file path is it going to be under? Is it always under the same file path? Do I need to somehow figure out the file path dynamically? I decided that for simplicity, we're going to assume that each device has its own log file under its host name, right? So this depends on how you've configured your syslog server to do things. A lot of what I'm doing depends on how you've configured things. So notice that automation is not just coding to solve the problem, it's coding to solve things based on how you configured it, and configuration might have to change in order to be able to automate things. I also decided, I'm trying to decide between grep and zgrep. Apparently grep is only usable for uncompressed files, and log files rotate on some kind of schedule that y'all set when configuring them, which would require zgrep. However, zgrep has a little bit worse performance. Now, that doesn't matter for just a single file, but like if we're talking, a single switch, but if like we were doing this across a bunch of switches or something, or a bunch of files, I don't know. I'm not digging using zgrep just for this initial proof of concept or MVP. So we're just only going to grep for uncompressed files, meaning ones that have not rotated yet, which means it's probably files from like that day or that week, or potentially way less time depending on how many logs are being logged. But again, that can be an enhancement to search uncompressed files. If we search the uncompressed files, I don't know how many uncompressed files will be on the server, and I don't want it like searching forever and like spiking CPU. So I don't off the top of my head know how we would determine how far back to go, because again, I don't have your network and I also don't work on this daily. So again, for now we're sticking with grep, and I think we're going to chain two greps, chain a grep for both the interface name in the host log file, and then grep for up down instead of regexing, because the regex also, again, it has a little bit worse performance. The way we'd have to write it has a little bit worse performance. And if we're doing this on a lot of different files, I don't know. Again, a lot of stuff doesn't matter unless you're scaling, right? If you're just doing it across like one device or one file or this and that, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to choose the grep just because it has a little bit better performance. And also, as you'll learn later, there's kind of a security thing at play here, but that's for a later video. If you choose the regex starting out, that's fine, right? Things can be refactored, improved, whatever. Now, Claude suggested that I add a -F flag to the grep for fast searching or something. I gotta look into that because I'm not like a Linux expert, but that might be happening. If grepping for unrotated log files is not enough or just a problem for some reason, we're probably gonna have to look at searching an actual tool. It's just or like a searchable actual log platform. I just have to figure out what log platform would actually be free, because I'm not gonna pay for one for this demo showing you guys. And also, just is it easy to work with programmatically, because there's lots of tools that are not, and I don't know. I get easily irritated. So that's where we're at right now. Time for a lunch break. What's up, jabronis? It's been a couple days. Baby Dev is napping. I'm getting a little bit of time to catch up on my work. I'm full-time momming first, working second, and so I have been spending a few minutes trying to catch up and not catch up, but figure out where we were at last time I was recording. Man, that's the hardest part about leaving and then coming back is you get a fresh brain, but also a reset memory. I just went through the videos that I've done so far for this script, and I think that I'm caught back up, and I think we are going to start actual implementation now. In our writing a script process here, we have gotten ideation from someone else. We've been in the process of breaking down the problem, gathering the information, and deciding the MVP, and kind of going back and forth between all those, depending on new information that was given, obstacles we've run into, blah, blah, blah. We are finally approaching this build and test one function at a time section. I'm first, we've got Proxmox set up here. My spouse is spinning up a Linux VM for me right now. I am going to go ahead and create a file to put on it with the fake syslog messages. Again, I have decided to do this because this is a coding course that we're focused on, not as much on the network setup configuration side of things. So I'm not showing you how to configure syslog. Also, I just don't have time, right? I need to give my time where it is most valuable to y'all, where my expertise is. I'm putting the fake syslog messages on there, and then programmatically we'll have addressed the risk of, oh, can we actually grep for these logs on a Linux box? I have full confidence that you guys can configure syslog and have those messages sent to a Linux box, right? That has nothing to do with the code, and that is something that's like not rare to do. Like I know it's possible. Obviously you might be sending them somewhere else or parsing through them with a different tool, but you get what I'm saying. We mostly need to make sure that our logic is sound, and that's how I'm gonna, simulate it as closely as possible without having you run into risk later, if that makes any sense. So let's get to it. Need to plug in my laptop here. It's time for lunch and I'm a little low on food. Okay, y'all, I'm sorry. I realize that I can't talk and code at the same time, so I'm going back to this retrospectively, and I'm going to kind of explain my thought process on some of this. And you'll notice that I did speed up the video just because, this would be really boring to watch as it happened, but I tried to leave all the important details in. If any of this looks unfamiliar, please go back to the beginning of the playlist where I talk about Python and coding fundamentals. So we're starting out by creating our Python file in our developer environment. And this is where I was just like thinking through the thought process, right? So you can do this on paper. I don't know, you can use some like project management tool. I'm just using comments and kind of talking about, okay, I'm gonna do this first, then this first, then this next in the script. Yeah, and so at the top, we always import our libraries like we've talked about before. Those are the things that are going to give us functionality that we don't have to code ourselves. And I'm kind of already, as you can see, like brainstorming particular libraries I might want to use in this instance, or that I already know about. I know that I need to connect to the Linux box, right? The Linux box in this case is going to act as our syslog server. So I need the credentials to be able to connect to that. And I want that at the beginning of the script so that I can use it later on in the script. I then need to ask the user which interface they want to examine. And I'm also going to end up asking them for their username and password. But basically, unless I just want to say, oh, I only examine this particular interface, I have to get that input from somewhere else. So I'm having the user input that. I'm going to grep through the syslogs. Since we're using a Linux server, I'm going to grep through that information and try to find where state changes from up to down and down to up. And then I want to print the result to the terminal. Like I mentioned before, you probably want to do something a little fancier or more consolidated if this was in an enterprise environment, but for right now, just printing to the terminal works. And everything we're doing here, with the exception of like making greps, is stuff that we've talked about in the course so far, which is pretty cool. So this is where I'm just researching GetPass because I know that this is used to securely take user input, but I actually have never used this library before because I previously didn't do a ton of network automation. I did other coding. And so I'm just learning about the library here and using Copilot to do that. You'll notice that I'm using Haiku 4.5, which is one of Claude's smaller, less powerful models. I'm just being lazy. I know that it's included in my plan, so I'm using it until I have a problem using it, and then I will maybe change it. And then I also know that you can use NetMiko to connect to devices to manage SSH sessions, but basically I was trying to figure out, hey, should I be using Paramiko or NetMiko? I'm not really sure, because again, I haven't done a lot of this. And it's funny because Claude actually went back and forth and told me, oh, this would be better, this would be better. I went with Paramiko because it's a more general library for doing connections. So what are we doing now? This is just more of me thinking. Again, part of the hard part of recording this is you can do a lot of back and forth and thinking and erasing and typing. But now I am trying to figure out how I actually get that user input in code. I'm starting to work through the comments that I've written. And as you can see, I'm just using Copilot, the Haiku model, to get more information about how GetPass works. And it tells me, hey, actually for usernames, you should be using input because GetPass was only built to take care of passwords. It also claims that usernames are not sensitive information. I don't know if I agree with that, but like I said, I'm kind of working quickly on the script for y'all. And yeah, now this is the process of me figuring out how to get that input from the user in the terminal. And you'll see me kind of going around back and forth in the script while writing it, because I'm having thoughts like, you know, should I ask for the username and password when I run the connect to Linux box function? Or should I gather the username and password before I run that function to connect? So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm kind of going back and forth between including that as part of a function, separating it. Ultimately, I did end up separating it because functions are all supposed to only have one exact purpose. So I wanted to have a function that collects the user input, and then I wanted to have a function that actually connects to the Linux box. There's a lot of different reasons that you do this when you code, but one of them is because it's easier to test and see exactly what's wrong. One function just shouldn't be doing too much. So yeah, that is this process. You can see that I'm doing Paramiko, the name of the library, then dot, and kind of just seeing what functionality is built into Paramiko and making an educated guess about which one I should be choosing after that. Same thing, I can see the attributes that are here. Now you can see that Copilot is actually suggesting that I set a policy, a key policy for connecting to the Linux box, and I wasn't familiar with, you know, if that was necessary or not. You'll see here Copilot's still suggesting to add a policy. And it's suggesting to auto add a policy because I started getting errors. Excuse me, I haven't gotten errors yet in this point in the script, but eventually I start getting errors because I decide to not set a policy for this. And it turns out AI let me know that by default, Paramiko only trusts known host, which means that if the host is not known, that function is going to error out. And so I end up adding an auto add policy function to basically just trust everything. And I did that because we're in the make crap work phase of the script. We're just in the phase of, is it possible to do what we're setting out to do? This is not code I'm going to make public. This is not code I'm going to suggest you use, but this is how it works when you code. You start out just making each thing work, and then you go back and you make it better before production time. Okay, so I've written that connect to Linux box function. I included a print statement just so I can easily see that it connected. Again, in the get working phase, it can be nice to have print statements throughout the script because you can obviously see at what points things were working. Let's see. So yeah, now I'm asking them what interface that they want to examine because, you know, there could be different interfaces. It's not always going to be like interface 1. And I do specify what a format that interface should take because, as you'll see, we don't want them to just give us absolutely anything for an interface. Now, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit by doing that. This is a semi-security practice, not just a make-it-work thing. It's also a make-it-work thing. Like, let's say that somebody just puts the number 1 in there, and your script is expecting the format 101. Well, your script's going to break. Also, from a security standpoint, that means that a hacker could just put anything in there and whatever, do whatever they do. So now you can see after connecting to the Linux box, I am making a grep creator, where as soon as I get the interface name, I will use that interface name and plug that into a grep command. You'll see that it's suggesting one for me now, and I'm going to end up mostly accepting that suggestion, but the grep command is going to change every time depending on what interface is used, and if I was using more than one device or more than one switch in the script, that would also change too, the file name I'm going from. But the grep command is going to look for the artificial file name I created for syslogs, which is switch example 01, and then we're also going to, it's AI suggested adding the .f flag to this. They're showing -e flag right now. It initially suggested -f for like fast grepping, and I don't remember what the reason was now that it suggested doing that, but you know, newsflash, heads up, spoiler alert in this video, it doesn't end up working. I don't know why, but the grep works when I, grep for the interface in question in the file that is necessary. And when I grep, also chain a grep that looks for that specific phrase of like the state change to up or down. And then finally, when I specify tail -1, oh, there it is. The -f flag tells it to treat it as a fixed string instead of a regex. You want little string matching. So basically, I thought that, hey, I do want literal string matching, so I'll try this, but it didn't end up working. I'm not a Linux expert, so maybe I'll tell you why that didn't work in the next video. We'll see. But anywho, at the end of the grep command, chained grep commands, I specify tail -1, and I do that to say, hey, start at the bottom of the file and give me the first match that you see. And I did that because upon doing research on syslogs, the oldest syslogs are going to be at the top of a file, and the newest ones are going to be at the bottom. And we want the last time that an interface was up, meaning the most recent time. So we want that grep command to start at the bottom of the file, not at the top, and to match the very first time, because we don't care about every time it went up or down, just the last time. So again, this is just me working with AI to understand how to make that grep command. Again, I've definitely used Linux, especially when I was on Firepower Tech, but I'm not an expert. So yeah. Enjoy me continuously figuring out how to do that. That curly brace where I put interface is me saying, hey, whatever the interface is that the user gives, plug that into this grep command. The rest of the grep command is just a literal text that does not change. And yeah, so I'm asking it to pass in interface input, and then I'm setting the interface equal to interface input. Oh, and then it's at this point that I recognize that I need a validator, that I can't just accept any input for the interface for the reasons I already mentioned. So I created an interface validator. Input validation is the official term for what I was just explaining to you, where you actually check that the person who's inputting information did it the way they're supposed to for workability and security reasons. So I'm creating that now, and I'm asking AI to create the regex for me to use in the validator. A regex is a pattern matcher, so I'm like, hey, create a regex that matches 1/0/1, and I said, let the port or interface go up to 30. I just chose 30 randomly for this script, guys. Obviously, in your own environments, you could easily change that depending on the number of interfaces actually in question. I just did that for giggles. And again, you'll see this script change a lot, right? I put the collection of the interface input within the validator initially, but as you'll see, I eventually changed that because, again, then the function is doing two things at once. It's asking for user input and it's validating. That's not best practice. I know that I told you I would not show best practices in this first video just working, but I can only undo so much of what I typically do on it, at least without thinking about it a lot. And that re.match, which says if re.match, that is where I'm using the re library, which is built into Python. That is what AI suggested I use for creating the regex. We'll talk more about that in the next video. But .match is a built-in function into the re library, and I'm saying, hey, if it's a match between the pattern I specified and the user input that I'm expecting, then go ahead and return the interface input and we continue on with the script. Else print invalid interface format and basically ask the user to have the user input the information once again. So, okay, now you can see that I'm splitting it out. A function for getting the username, a function for getting the password. We're getting real singular responsibility principle up in here. Getting the interface, like I just mentioned, we're separating that out. This is fun fact, guys. This is the first time I've ever live coded, even though it's edited. I do not show people my code, at least in the past, because people are judgy and it can be embarrassing, especially when you're starting out. I just give zero craps anymore because I'm experienced and older and wiser to know that that's dumb as hell, and just kind of want to be the change that I wish to see in the industry. And I think it's most helpful, based on my experience, to see people actually do things and think through processes. So that's why I'm showing that to y'all. But if you're watching this and like, wow, like she knew all these things to do and she went really fast and blah, blah, blah. Guys, I've been learning to code since like 2018 and got my master's degree in 2021. And by no means am I just like a guru expert, but you practice these things and it becomes more second nature. And especially when it comes to automation, because you're doing a lot of the same actions every time, like, connecting to a device, right? You're going to learn how to do that once, and then that's going to be a lot easier in the future. Same thing here. Even though I haven't done a ton of this, I have done it before, so I can kind of skip around somewhat. Yeah. So don't compare yourself to me. It's not possible to compare yourself to me. We have different backgrounds, different amounts of experience. And also, I'll just go ahead and say this now. There's multiple ways to solve a problem or to write a script. So I'm showing you how I'm thinking through it. But, somebody else who knows how to code can, or probably will, watch this video and be like, oh, you should have done this, or I would have done it that way, or it would have been better if. And again, this is the truth. When you're coding, you get crap to work first. If you figured out how to get it to work, that's an A+ win, okay? Improving how you wrote it later is something you can do later. But most of the time, people want to know that something's actually possible. They want to know it's possible. They want to see it with their own eyes that it works. You can optimize it, make it more secure. I'm saying later, but again, before production use. So I am still working on this in real time. This is how long it took me to figure out how to create this grep command, and you'll see later that I still effed it up. If you have questions on what I'm doing in this script, definitely leave them down in the comments. Tell me where you got lost or where you have a question. It was really hard to vlog this entire process. This was a huge experiment in video creation for you guys, but I'm loving that I got this. Okay, so now I've decided that I'm going to connect to the Linux box after I create the actual grep. Wasn't necessary that I do that. I just was like, there's no point in connecting to the box until I know what I'm grepping for. That was my thought process in changing around those functions. But these Python functions, they run in the order that they're called. So right now I'm just writing basically like the blueprint or the instructions for the functions, but I'm not calling on them, say, hey, come to life, or hey, actually run. I could write them in this order and then I could call them in a different order. That's a possibility too, and it will run in the order that they are called. Okay, you'll notice that I added at the end a function to close the connection to the device, to the Linux server. Very important. probably shouldn't have included that in video 1, but like I said, I couldn't help it. Okay, now I'm actually doing the meat of the project, which is actually finding the last time that an interface was up. So all the other functions and things that we're doing in this script, it's all preparation to actually do the thing that we care about. So hopefully you can see a little bit how we break down problems. We don't just go straight to finding the last time an interface was up. We need the right user input. We need to know how to connect to the box programmatically. We need to know how to create the grep command dynamically. We want to validate that the user input is one that we actually wanted. And now we're actually looking to execute that grep command. So I didn't actually see what I was AI looking for. Okay, so I think what happened was AI suggested the code for this function because it does a pretty good job of suggesting it, and it had all 3 of these values in the function: standard in, standard out, standard error. And I'm not familiar with those. So I'm trying to learn. It's telling me I should use Paramiko's exec command, built-in command function to run the grep command. So again, at the time, I didn't really understand what the point of all of those values were. But the .exec command that I'm running is most important. So device connection, that variable device connection there, is the active connection to the Linux box that I created in the previous function, and I returned it so that I could keep using it in the script. And then I run the .exec command that is built into Paramiko because, and why can I do that, guys? Again, we're getting a little deep here. I'm going to share some theory later in the course just because it's really hard to get by without it, to like understand what you're doing. But the reason I'm doing that is because if you notice, device connection is of type Paramiko. Okay, we've talked about data types like string and int and whatever. You can also have a data type of basically libraries. It's not actually libraries. Again, we're going to talk about classes and objects later. Google it or use AI if I don't put it out fast enough for you. But device connection is of type Paramiko, and because it is of type Paramiko, we can use any of the functionality built into Paramiko for device connection. And I think that that whole like standard out.read.decode, that was suggested by AI, and I just went with it because, again, I haven't used Paramiko before. But it makes sense that I might have to find a way to process or read whatever output comes back from that grep command. I probably, if I was really, really having some time to do this, I would actually like ask AI a little more about it to understand what that line does. But again, I got a baby and I was trying to do this for y'all very quickly. So I'm doing the same thing now, but for finding the last time the int was down, because in my head I haven't yet decided how I'm going to determine when this value happens. You'll notice the things that I'm passing into each function. I'm passing in as a requirement the device connection, the grep command in question, whether it's grep command 1 or grep command 2 that we created. We've got 2 different ones for whether or not the interface is up or down. And let's see, what's the third thing this is where I'm finding out that I need to do tail -1, but I also passed in a third parameter, but I don't remember what it is now. You'll see it in a second. You'll notice I had to do a lot of research, networking related, to actually write this script. So even though y'all are the domain experts, you may still find yourself using AI to double check networking or networking adjacent context in terms of like how to configure something in order for your automation to work, or maybe if you're not a Linux guru, maybe Linux, things like that. In my experience, basic questions like that are trustworthy from AI. Like I said, like configuration. Especially if there's like documentation, a lot of documentation out there for it. You see, I end up changing to Sonnet, because I started getting AI responses that I felt like weren't that good or irritating me, so I went up a model, and it turns out that I am paying for Sonnet, so. But anywho, if it's foundational knowledge that you just don't have off the top of your head, I do think that AI is generally good at foundational knowledge in the same way that I've taught you with code. Now, would I necessarily trust AI at face value for more advanced topics? Or maybe, I don't know, like things that require complex critical thinking, troubleshooting skills? I don't know, maybe. I mean, I would, you know, give it a go, but I'm just saying, maybe trust but verify with that one, trust a little less. This has been going back to good old Google for, you know, just learning how file extensions work in Linux and what syslog would look like for that. I could have used AI for this. I mean, I'm technically using AI. I'm using Google Gemini. But yeah, we are running Ubuntu, so our syslogs are typically stored at varlog syslog. I am not actually collecting real syslogs, right? I'm simulating it, so that's why I'm creating my own directory with a fake file name where they're, you know, fakely going, but you could change that later, right? Or we can change it in future iterations where we actually test this out with actual syslog configuration. Good old Vim. You'll notice that Gemini actually said, hey, use Nano because it's easier. And I'm like, hey, no, I've used Vim in the past. I can use Vim again. Yeah, we'll see. You'll see that I forgot things with Vim. I forgot to exit Vim, the classic joke. How do you forget that? Oh, this is where I'm doing additional research on the exact format of a syslog message. So I wanted to make it look as realistic as possible, and also just to know what I would need to include in a grep. And this might also be useful for y'all when you comment on how I did this and say, hey, could you do it this way? Or what about this or that? Maybe you want additional information out of this. We'll see. I learned that you need to have actual timestamps enabled when you configure syslog. I also found that you might have syslog messages that have like an asterisk or a period next to it, depending on if you have NTP issues. So I learned a lot in this that really made me think, because, you know, technically, again, this is just the minimum viable product version of this, but technically, if the time is not accurate when we pull a syslog message, I think that's useful information to know, because then it's not the actual last time the interface was up necessarily.
It turns out that I'm not going to take more advice. Sorry, baby dad is asleep. It turns out that I didn't follow my own advice about building and testing one function at a time, because I have so little time to do any of my work that I just, like, in a fury, just coded all of it without actually testing it, or coded almost all of it. So I didn't, I did at least plan it out, but, ideally I would have tested things worked. So at this point, the only thing that I have not coded is printing the result to the terminal and deciding if I want to share, basically, if I want to share when the interface went down, because that would kind of by proxy tell you when it went up, you know, like, or when it was last up. Like, do I just say, oh, it was last up like 1 second before it went down? Or do I want to say like when it went up and the logs plus when it went down, so we have like when it went up and for how long it was up. This probably, you know, this would have been something good as well to gather in the requirements, but I just am going to think a little bit about that decision. Coding this, again, I have experience doing this. I already know Python. I've been a developer before, whatever, but the Camtasia recording here says that this took me about an hour and 10 minutes. I ran into some issues with GitHub where it was like constantly down while I was trying to clone the repository. But yeah, a lot of this is made easier by the fact that I have that experience, and that I do have some knowledge of where to look for network automation libraries, right? Even though I haven't done a crap ton of network automation and I'm not a network engineer, that gives you a leg up knowing where to look and what people use. The script only deals with one switch, even though, you know, as a finished product, it would make more sense for it to deal with multiple switches, to have access to entire inventory, or to ask for the switch as well. Again, I have plenty to say about improving the script later, that I'm purposely not going out of my way to change the things that need to be changed for y'all's benefit at this point in the course.
All right, guys, and for the rest of me coding, I'm mostly just gonna like let the music play and make some annotations on the screen. I'm worried about this being a little boring. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it is long and you're just literally watching me code, but I want there to be at least one video out there of you seeing somebody do it so that you can truly see what goes into it, the obstacles someone runs into, not just knowing what to type off the bat. So if you find this a little bit boring, you can skip to the end of the video. And if I'm losing your interest here, just please subscribe and watch for part 2, where we actually start refactoring this script to have best practices, to be more secure. We're also going to try to add that additional information that Aaron and James requested.
Okay, so I ran into an error about the host key not being known, right? So this is a learning experience for me. Apparently, when connecting, right, you have to set a policy about whether or not you're going to accept unknown keys, which sounds like a bad security practice, but just for getting it to work and in demonstration purposes, I added a line of code about adding an auto policy, which permits that. I'll show you the example in GitHub Copilot, not my actual code, just because I'm protecting my information. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool that I get to learn stuff along the way too. immediately I ran the script and it's not doing what I was expecting it to do. So that is why you test each function as you go, because this is how coding goes. And I was a big dummy. So let's test each function and troubleshoot this. turns out that I didn't follow my own advice about building and testing one function at a time because I have so little time to do any of my work that I just, like, in a fury, just coded all of it without actually testing it, or coded almost all of it. So I did at least plan it out, but, ideally I would have tested things worked. So at this point, the only thing that I have not coded is printing the result to the terminal and deciding if I want to share, basically, if I want to share when the interface went down, because that would kind of by proxy tell you when it went up, or when it was last up. Like, do I just say, oh, it was last up like 1 second before it went down? Or do I want to say, like, when it went up in the logs plus when it went down, so we have, like, when it went up and for how long it was up? This probably, this would have been something good as well to gather in the requirements, but I just am going to think a little bit about that decision. Coding this, again, I have experience doing this. I already know Python. I've been a developer before, whatever, but the Camtasia recording here says that this took me about an hour and 10 minutes. I ran into some issues with GitHub where it was, like, constantly down while I was trying to clone the repository. But yeah, a lot of this is made easier by the fact that I have that experience, and that I do have some knowledge of where to look for network automation libraries, right? Even though I haven't done a crap ton of network automation and I'm not a network engineer, that gives you a leg up knowing where to look and what people use. I also have AI, right? So before AI, I would have had to Google everything, and that takes way, way longer. I'm not going to bore you with, how that would have been so much harder, but just rest assured that AI immensely speeds up coding workflows. And that was definitely the case here too. I could have maybe taken all day on a couple of these questions I had if I had to Google everything, sift through the results, and then read all the results and make decisions about them. But just to summarize what I've done here, I am using Paramiko rather than NetMiko. I'm using Paramiko rather than NetMiko because AI has suggested that makes more sense for connecting to a Linux box rather than a networking specific device. There are other reasons too that I can't remember now. I am importing GetPass to securely take input for people's passwords, right? So there's going to be some sort of SSH credentials to this Linux server. There'll be a username and password. Obviously, there are more secure ways to do this, but we're in the getting it working phase. I just have a username and password. I'm having them just input the username, password, and the interface in question. We're assuming that this script only deals with one switch, even though, as a finished product, it would make more sense for it to deal with multiple switches, to have access to entire inventory, or to ask for the switch as well. But anyway, GetPass does not take as arguments anything but passwords, apparently. So I would have liked to use GetPass to also take their username, but instead we're just using the password. So that is something that could be improved potentially in the future. And then we're also importing the re library. Again, I have plenty to say about improving the script later, that I'm purposely not going out of my way to change the things that need to be changed for y'all's benefit at this point in the course. But that is a built-in library for working with regexes, right? So I'm asking them for their username, password, and the interface that they want to examine or know the last time up. And then I am validating the interface. We actually haven't talked about this, so I accidentally still am skipping ahead. But we are validating the input of that interface, right? To make sure that they actually gave us a valid interface, that it's not malicious code, also that it just doesn't break our code because they didn't specify the name in some weird way, like shortening the name of it in a way we're not expecting. Then we are creating our grep using that interface name provided. So we have two grep commands, one that greps in the log file for the interface, and then that the state changed to up, and that tail -1 means that it's going to start from the bottom of the file where the newest logs are, and once it finds a matching result, it's going to stop. Then our second grep command is doing the same thing except looking for state change to down. Then we have a function that is connecting to our Linux box. We're passing in a username and password into that function because we need both of those things in order to connect. And here to connect, I'm using Paramiko, right? That .ssh client is built into into the library. It's a built-in function. And this host name just has this line here just so that I'm not recording what it is for the video. But I am going to actually put the actual host name in that field. Then we have the fun functions. We have find last int up. That actually doesn't make any sense. I should rename that later on. Like find last time the int is up, not the last interface to go up. But it takes in that device connection to the Linux box. Grep command 1, the one that finds the last time it was up, and the interface name. And the interface name, and this is the actual function that is actually doing the work of grepping through the file. Everything else we did up to this point was work that we needed to do in order to get to this function. We needed to be able to get the username and password we needed to be able to get input from the user, we needed to be able to connect to the Linux box, we needed to be able to create and validate our grep commands. Now we are finally actually grepping. We're also grepping the next function for the last time that the interface went down. And then we have a function closing the connection to the Linux box. So, let's finish this up.
that it's working now.
My phone's about to die and I need to eat dinner, but you can see that the script's actually working now. So, yay! Finally got to work. I had to troubleshoot a bunch of different stupid things that were mostly my fault. Yeah, but pretty much all my fault. We'll see if I got to edit the video in order to include all the ways in which I was like, oops, just to help my butt. But, yeah, but we worked through them using both my own brain and AI. There is just one kind of lingering thing here with the script, and that is that it prints interface 101 with last up add and then the entire system message. And although it changed the state to up, that's not technically like the last time it was up, that was just the last time the state changed. So, it's also not that useful how it is now. It would be nice to just parse the output for just the date and time. So I'm trying to think if I will figure out how to do that or not, or if I just want to. I think for this initial proof of concept, I just need to print the message of when it was last. And then I would refactor the next video to parse out the exact date and time and make it look pretty. I think that makes more sense. The one thing I would change is I'm probably going to specify I'm just going to put one message that says when it went up and then when it went down so that they have the entire time frame. Okay, anyway, I'm going to make that change, but we know it's going to work. The script works at this point. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Please subscribe because we're going to continue to improve upon this script because I'm going to show you best practices, how to refactor the code, how to improve the security of this code. And we're also going to continue to add on those additional features of the script that Aaron and James requested previously, or if for some reason we can't, we'll discuss why that is. So again, thanks so much, and take care.